Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone out there. Thank you for joining our current webinar that will be talking about an update on our PTP products in the Sub-6 band. We have our product manager here, Bruce Collins, that's going to be going into some details. So without further ado, Bruce, I turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, and thanks everybody for joining today. As Andrew mentioned, we're going to be covering our PTP product portfolio in the sub-6 gigahertz range. We have several products in this area, and we've had some new software releases, and I'll take you through those. If you have any questions at all about any of the products that we cover, any features that you'd like to hear more about, please put them in the question window or the chat window on your webinar interface, and then we'll go through those. We'll take those as they come in, and there'll be plenty of time at the end. I suspect the presentation will take about 25 or 30 minutes, and we'll have whatever discussion we'd like to have at the end. So with that, let's get started. So just as a level set, we talk about our point-to-point portfolio. We really are deploying these products in a wide range of vertical markets. Traditionally, service providers have been a very strong market for these products, both internet service providers extending their network into new areas, as well as mobile operators around the world deploying these products for backhaul in 2G, 3G, and now 4G LTE backhaul ranges. So lots of applications, and I'll mention some of the features that are specifically suited to service providers. We also see rapidly growing as an area for us called industrial communications, and this is really the usual candidates here are oil and gas, the petrochem industry, the electric utility industry, connecting up backhauling and aggregating data, whether it's SCADA data or video surveillance data as the broadband applications take hold. But with the combination of reliability of the radios themselves as far as the air interface and the communications, but then also the ruggedization of the platforms is very well suited for industrial communications. Enterprise is what I kind of think of as light industry, but it's really the healthcare and hospitality industries, as well as schools and campuses where you're interconnecting buildings. Point-to-point has a strong play in those applications as well. And there the goal is perhaps a bit more on the cost-sensitive side, but there's no shortage of requirements for bandwidth that continues to grow day after day. So enterprise connectivity is important as well. And then for our government verticals, we talk about state and local. We have products in the 4.9 gigahertz public safety band. This is important for both video surveillance, but also some applications where you're backhauling land mobile radios. And a big driver in state and local government is cost reduction. So leased line replacements are while that's a common thread across all these verticals to reduce the cost and move to a private network, that's especially important to state and local governments as budgets continue to be under pressure. And then finally, the federal defense market. I'll describe today one of our products that is particularly focused on national governments and national defense types applications around the world, both with the NATO band, both U.S. Department of Defense as well as NATO partners around the world. And we'll talk about both tactical communications, which is rapid response, disaster recovery, as well as fixed permanent links for border protection and infrastructure enhancement. So lots of different applications, and I'll dig in now into the products themselves, but to always be thinking about how do they relate back to the particular problem that you're trying to solve in one of these verticals. So go ahead, Andrew. The portfolio itself is really in 4 sleeves. Starting from the left, and we talk about our PTP 450. This is the entry-level product for point-to-point, covering really those enterprise applications and last-mile access for enterprise customers. So if you have a small business or medium-sized business that you want to have a dedicated point-to-point link to serve, Oftentimes a PTP 450 is a good solution for that. It covers around 130 megabits per second. The 450i was recently introduced back in, I believe, October of last year. This is an enhancement or update from the 450. You'll notice it's really positioned as a more ruggedized enclosure, so it's IP67. It's perfectly suited for those rugged industrial applications. It also has more horsepower than the 450, so it does 130 megabits per second today, but it will, by the middle of the year, will support 30 and 40 meg channels, which will increase the capacity of this unit up to about 260 megabits per second. Then we have the PTP 650 is really the workhorse of this portfolio. These are deployed around the world in a wide variety of applications, and I'll mention those in passing as we go through, and I'll reemphasize some of the key features that the PTP 650 platform has. And then finally, the PTP 700 on the right-hand side. This is our newest platform in the portfolio. This was also released late last year. This is particularly targeted at national defense and military applications, as well as some narrow applications around hazardous environments in oil and gas industry. So we'll talk about how that plays in oil and gas. But the PTP 700 is sort of the new kid on the block, and it also has some unique features which I'll talk about as we go. So here's a little better picture of the PTP 450. The couple things that are unique in the portfolio about this product are, while it covers the 5 gigahertz band, 5.4 and 5.8 bands, it's also available in that 3.5 band, which is a licensed band around most of the world, as well as the 3.65 gigahertz band, which is slightly licensed here in the U.S. and Canada. It does have nice configurable channel widths, everything from 3.5 meg channels up to 20 megahertz channels. And again, as I mentioned, both 3 gig and 5 gig. So this is a great solution, again, for those enterprise access. You want to connect up a small, medium-sized business, and you don't want to put that traffic on your point-to-multipoint network. It fits nicely into an overall PMP450 architecture, where you can use the same exact user interface, the same exact installation procedures that you're used to with your PMP450 product, and you can now use a point-to-point link and put those higher traffic customers off on their own leg. Then we'll move on to the next platform, which is the 450i. So again, this is a new platform. The first thing that jumps out at this platform is the ruggedized enclosure, and you'll see in the upper right this radio has been submerged in a tank of water in our office, and been streaming video out of that tank for some months now. So it's clearly well beyond. While it's certified to IP67, it's a very ruggedized enclosure for these types of harsh conditions that you run into in the industrial sector. In addition to being ruggedized, the radio platform continues to expand in the security capabilities. So it now supports SNMP-v3 and secure web. Of course, it has the encryption that the customers need for secure communications. We've also added a secondary port on this product, which does PoE out, so you can power a standard power over Ethernet camera, 802.3 AT video camera, directly off of one of these ports. So it means the installation for video surveillance applications is a lot cleaner. You have a single drop cable, you power the camera directly off of it, and you can do all of your management and everything through that one cable. Another thing that I think a lot of people didn't realize when we launched the 450i, and I want to emphasize, is the radio in the 450i is a significant enhancement over what's in the 450. What that means for the user, and this is all brought out in Link Planner, is significantly higher transmit power. This radio does 28 dBm of transmit power. So where the regulatory environment allows this product, like for example 5.8 gigahertz most places, You can use the full 28 dBm transmit power, and then tack on that 23 dBi integrated panel. And this point-to-point radio has a significantly supports significantly long lengths. In addition to that, we've integrated a what we call a super het design, which helps with adjacent channel interference. So all in all, this radio is it's kind of a best packaging of latest in radio technology, along with that constantly improving 450 platform software architecture. So it's really the culmination in all of the latest enhancements in technology, both hardware and software, in this 450i platform. And what you'll see going forward in the next 3 to 4 months is we're going to take advantage of the new processor in this platform. And the first thing you'll see is the addition of 30 megahertz channels and 40 megahertz channels, which will increase the capacity up to between 190 meg if you're running 30 meg channels and 250 plus megabits per second in a 40 megahertz channel. So you'll start to see enhancements coming with this radio, and we have headroom for future enhancements as well. So this is really where we're going with the entry tier product. And you'll see with the ruggedization, the additional processing power, and the significantly enhanced radio, this is definitely one to take a look at. If you've in the past been looking at a 450, you'll see a big jump in performance when you go to the 450i. One other feature that we're introducing with both the 450i and also when I talk about the 700 is what's referred to as ATEX HAZLOC. This is a particular capability for oil and gas applications. So whether it's in the generation part of or collection part of the petrochem industry or the pipeline aspects of it, anywhere that the hazardous conditions require an ATEX HAZLOC certification, we now have a product in the 450i and the 700 that can be used in those applications. So what we do is we take the radio to third-party test houses to validate the hardware design, the software configuration, and it's a particular stamp of approval for ATEX and HAZLOC. And the ATEX is for European standards, and HAZLOC is for North American standards. So they're functionally equivalent, but there's some slight differences, and you can see the specs there in the sheet. The main thing to note on ATEX HAZLOC is that it is a unique SKU. So when you come to an application that requires this, you'll need to order a special model that is ATEX HAZLOC compliant. And part of the reason for that is we have to audit the manufacturer this all the way back through our factory, and then the software configuration locks down the EIRP. There's some EIRP limits that are special to ATEX HAZLOC solutions. So when you have an application that requires ATEX HAZLOC, make sure that you're ordering that particular model. And Link Planner will take that into account. So when you select the ATEX model or select that you're going to use an ATEX application, it will indicate what those EIRP limits are. Okay, so we'll move on to the 650 platform. PTP 650 is the product that covers 4.9 to 6 gigahertz and delivers up to 450 megabits per second. And it's available in the 3 different form factors. You see the integrated model on the left, which has an integrated 23 dBi antenna. There's a connectorized model, which you can put anything up to, frankly, 8-foot dish or 2.6 meter dish, as well as on the right-hand side, a small form factor, which is well suited for video surveillance and small cell backhaul applications. That has an integrated 19 dBi antenna. This is kind of a summary spec sheet, if you will, but I'll just highlight some of the things that are unique or important around the 650. Channel bandwidth flexibility is key, so this product can be adjusted anywhere from a 5 meg channel up to a 45 megahertz channel. This gives you a lot of flexibility in noisy environments or where you're going to densely pack these links. You can put them close together and also with the high spectral efficiency of more than 10 bits per hertz. you can put a lot of capacity into a small area using a combination of the channel bandwidths and that efficiency. The product supports E1 and T1 TDM traffic for those customers that are still interested in deploying or replacing leased line circuits that are leveraging that T1 or E1 technology. This product is a drop-in replacement for a T1 link or an E1 link. And then for the IT departments that are on the call today, we support jumbo frames, IPv6 management for both payload as well as the management interfaces, support both IPv4 and IPv6 dual stack, so that when you deploy these radios, they're ready to go for the future with IPv6. The product supports eight different quality of service queues. This allows the network operator to classify and prioritize up to 8 different types of traffic to determine what goes out over the air first. It's a strict priority queue. So if you put your voice packets at the highest priority, those will always go out ahead of the normal email traffic or data traffic. And then we also talk about in-band and out-of-band management. The radio has 3 physical ports on the back of it. It has 2 gigabit Ethernet copper ports, and then an SFP cage for a fiber interface. So some customers like to run fiber directly into the radio. What those ports allow you to do is some flexibility. Is you have a out-of-band management capability. I can run all of my management traffic on a separate port physically using that second GigE port for the fiber interface. That second GigE port can also be a 802.3 AT output port, so I can power a camera directly off of this radio or any other type of device that runs 802.3 AT power. So for example, our PMP450i access point could be powered directly off of this. And then the last thing I'll note is this radio supports synchronous Ethernet and 1588 timing. This is primarily used in 4G backhaul, as it's important for synchronizing those LTE networks, both for doing mobile handovers, but also for billing and timing and those types of applications where knowing the precise time, frequency, and phase over a wide area network is critical for making the mobile network operate. So that's just some of the key features. There's a lot more we could talk about on the 650, but let's keep moving, Andrew, and go on to the next. When we talk about the point-to-point links, and this slide really could be applicable to all of the products I've been mentioning, but the idea being that with a point-to-point network, you can run these different sort of links. And I'll show you, starting in the left-hand side, there's sort of the high side to high side connection. That's a backhaul that would be sort of traditional from 2 high buildings or from a mountaintop or a mast to another high point. We also see applications going from that high point down to the street level. You'll see, for example, there's 3 links extending down to the street level. This is an example of our ability to do synchronization. So you can run these links right next to each other, and you can synchronize the TDD frame so that they don't self-interfere with each other, and so you can densely populate or pack links into a small area. Then I think a couple other things to point out here is if you look down the middle of the street there, you can see a relay operation. So you can extend all of these links and run them in a relay mode and run point to point to point down a street, and you back these up at each relay point. So you can run those strand architectures. And then last but not least, I'll mention at the bottom of the picture, you can see a near line of sight application going through some foliage, and in the upper right, a non-line of sight application where you're counting on the reflection of off the side of a building. So those non-line of sight links are typically quite a bit shorter. Might be talking about 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers, where you're going to be counting on those reflections. Near line of sight will depend on the amount of obstacles or foliage that might be in the way. And our link planner tool will help you determine what the capacity and availability of those links would be. I want to highlight here the PTP 650 back in Wispapalooza late last year. We did a bake-off between a number of different products, and the PTP 650 won in several different categories, but particularly of note is the spectral efficiency concept. I think it's important to note that regardless of the channel bandwidth that you pick, anywhere from 5 megahertz channel all the way up to that 45 megahertz channel, you can get 10 bits per hertz. So the math works out pretty simple. If you're running in a 40 megahertz channel, you can get up to 400 megabits per second in that channel. So that's important to note when you're planning these networks and trying to get the most out of that precious spectrum that you're looking to use. We did just do a software release, so we continue to make enhancements to these platforms as customers come in and request new features. So what you'll see, we just released OL141 release last week. There are a number of new features in here that primarily have been requested by customers like yourselves on the phone today. So if you have ideas for features, there's a place on the community forum that you can go in and request a feature, and we in the product management team look at all of those feature requests, and that's how many of these make it into the subsequent releases. Let me just highlight a few of the features on here. We had a customer request that we support the synchronous Ethernet interface via the fiber port. So in the past, you were only able to use the sync E reference was only available on the copper ports. But we had some customers that were using the fiber interface and sync E, and so now we're able to deliver that sync E signal, if you will, and that reference is now available on the fiber port. We made a number of enhancements to the Spectrum Expert page, which is part of our dynamic spectrum optimization or real-time spectrum analyzer feature. So as we've increased the number of channels and the channel sizes, the number of channels has gone way up. So we've made it a lot easier to select and deselect and how you display channels. So you'll definitely want to upgrade your radios and take a look at that, because it makes the whole management of that spectrum optimization a lot easier. Next one on here is we have some customers that, while the radio is a dual polarity radio, meaning it sends part of the signal on the horizontal polarity and part of the signal on the vertical polarity, we have some customers that are retrofitting existing antennas or in existing networks that were single polarity only antennas. And so they can put in a PTP 650, leverage their existing antenna, and enable only one of the polarities. So they can enable either the horizontal only or the vertical only. So this is, again, a way of reusing your infrastructure, but significantly increasing the capacity that's available on the infrastructure. And you don't have to go up and rip out to these large antennas, but you can just simply reuse that, take out that old analog modem, analog radio, put in a 650, and now your capacity is going to go way up. A couple of minor things we introduced. This was another, again, I have to say this is another customer request. Can I find out what is the serial number and the MAC address from within the GUI and within the SNMP interface? So now that's all been added to the web page. So now you can get, you've always been able to get the MAC address. Now you can also get the serial number, which is for those inventory tracking systems. That's a nice little feature. We continue to expand into new markets with this product. So we added a 4.9 gigahertz band for Japan, and this just speaks to the flexibility of the radio. Is that as and when new bands or regulatory rules change, we can make these adjustments in software releases. And in this case, we had some very specific requirements in Japan, and we were able to add a new band to support that market. So as you're looking at new markets, as you see new rules come down the pipe from whether it's the FCC in the U.S. or the equivalent regulatory body around the world, we can take advantage of those rule changes and keep plugging away with these radios. And then last but not least, we increased the range of the product from 200 kilometers up to 250 kilometers. You might have seen some press releases or information about a link that we did up in Pikes Peak last year. We wanted to prove out this functionality, so we actually went 254 kilometers. and you'll see that we increased the maximum range now in the software itself to go up to that 250 kilometer limit. So I don't think you'll find very many links in the world that are longer than that, so we should be good on any link you find anywhere in the world that you can get line of sight to, that we'll be able to get this, we'll be able to cover that range and close that link. I always like to mention dynamic spectrum optimization. This is a key feature, and what you see here is a PTP 650 running from 4.9 up to 6 gigahertz. And this is a real-time spectrum analyzer, so it's always operating in the background. It doesn't impact the payload traffic, and you'll always be able to see what's happening. Everywhere in the network that you have one of these PTP 650s deployed, you'll be able to see exactly what's happening on each of those individual channels from a noise or background interference level. So you can use that information for a couple of ways. One is for network planning. I can decide where I want to expand the network. I can see where other networks are coming online around me. And then you can also have the radio automatically, using our dynamic spectrum optimization feature, self-optimize and find a new channel. When interference does occur, the radio will jump to a new channel that it has identified has a better link budget or a better fade margin. So you'll be able to jump to that new channel automatically, and it does that without impacting the payload traffic. So it's a hitless fashion that it can go from the current operating channel to find a new one that has a better fade margin. So a key capability for link reliability. I also mentioned, just because we have that new feature on synchronous Ethernet, we do support this for LTE backhaul. This is both synchronous Ethernet and 1588. So the important thing that we've added with the 0141 release is that synchronous Ethernet reference signal is now available at the fiber port. So I kind of wanted just to reemphasize that that's now available in 0141. And that software release I mentioned is available for download now. So it's something you can go on to the Cambium support page and download that for your radios today. And here's the link I mentioned for Pikes Peak to Cheyenne, Wyoming. What we did here was we set up a link. It's actually 245.8 kilometers or 153 miles, and it went from the top of Pikes Peak Mountain out to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we ran voice and video and data streams back and forth across this link to prove out this new capability in the radio. If you go to the next slide, Andrew, you'll be able to see the range of this. So if you plot it on a picture of the United States, you can see just how far this link went. And then on the bottom is a view of our link planner, which is a terrain. This is a topology or terrain view showing from one end of the link to the other what was in that path. So we were able to use Link Planner to identify that we were going to have a good signal. We went out and were able to deploy this link in a matter of essentially less than an hour after being on site. We had this link up and running, even at this extreme end of the range. So it kind of proved a couple things. It proved that we could. The air interface was now supporting these extreme ranges, but also the ability to rapidly deploy these links. There's a nice video available on YouTube. If you search on Pikes Peak Cambium Networks, you'll see a video and some more of the background on that particular case study. And then sort of the next topic I wanted to mention was the reliability of these radios. This is another aspect that I don't think it's emphasized enough, is the reliability both in the air interface and the functionality of the radios, but also the reliability of the equipment itself. With this PTP platform, which really encompasses the PTP 650, the PTP 700, and then also the predecessor, which was the PTP 500 and 600. And we have over 5 billion field hours of operation. The PTP 650, the goal was to exceed 40 years MTBF, and at this point, with more than 20,000 units deployed, we're seeing, based on any field returns, which are few and far between, more than 100 years MTBF on the 650. So it continues in that heritage of very high reliability on these radio platforms. So when you do put these up on a tower, you're confident that they're going to be up there for a long time and not have any issues. I'll tell you a little bit about how we achieve that reliability. It's not just by hoping, but by a lot of work that goes into making that happen. So Andrew, if you go on to the next slide. Well, this is just an example of why. This came from one of our customers, and again, another posting on our community forum. But essentially, this is a good reason why you want reliable networks. This is up in Canada on a 300-foot or 100-meter tower. And believe me, I certainly wouldn't be up there, but I don't think anybody wants to be up there in the middle of winter replacing a radio. So it's critically important that you deploy reliable, rugged equipment in these types of applications. So this is an example of both our PTP 600 as well as our PTP 800 up on that tower. So some of the testing that we do, and I think you'll find some of these pictures interesting. This is a picture in our a wind tunnel. We go to a third-party lab. We actually do third-party validation of the brackets and the wind load on the antennas, so we can determine exactly what tweaks that we need to make in making sure that both from a safety and reliability standpoint, that this radio will hold up in the most harsh environments. Similarly, for those maritime applications or coastal applications, we expose the finish and the bracketry to a high salt fog content, and we test this to military standards. The method is laid out there, but essentially you're exposing it to an extreme salt environment, and to determine what it's going to look like over a long period of time exposed to that salt spray that you'll see in a maritime or a coastal environment. We also do, as you saw on the previous chart with the 450i being submerged in a fish tank, we also do in a more controlled environment the particular testing to meet IP66 and 67, and you can see some of the testing that's done there, where you're both exposing the water to, or exposing the unit to jets of water from all directions, as well as immersion in 1 meter of water, and then looking to see if there's any intrusion whatsoever into the unit itself. And this gets done at the time of design, and then it gets done periodically to make sure that we're still holding within those tight design constraints to make sure that's still happening. Okay. Here's a shock and vibration table. So again, to mil standard testing, we do shock and vibration, and this is meant to simulate the shock and vibration that a unit will go through during shipment, as well as transport from the staging area out to the installation. So while these are fixed radios, damage can occur in those processes. So we want to make sure that the radios will hold up in those types of environments. And then lastly, the critical thing that we do that, as far as I can tell, is pretty unique in the industry. We put every single PTP 650 and 700 goes through a factory temperature test. And what this means is every unit is connected up to another radio, so we make a complete functional link. We test all the modulations, all the bandwidths, and we put that through a cold cycle, so we take it down to -40°C for 30 minutes. We cold start it, make sure it's going to start up at that low temperature. We do that functional test again at the cold temperature, and then we ramp the oven up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 C, and we run that functional test at the hot temperature again. And it's important to note, this is not just a sampling of radios, but every single radio. So every single 650 that leaves our factory has been through this temperature test. And this is why we claim and we see in reality, we just don't see any no fault found or dead on arrival or units that show up and don't work. It's just unheard of. So you can be confident if you order these 650s and you're staging them up and getting ready to go, they've been fully tested and are ready to be deployed into your network. And you'll know that they've been tested at all of these extremes. Another area that we really pride these radios on is the security aspects. And while at the extreme level we have our PTP 700, which goes to the FIPS 140-2 validation, which we go and get the NIST group in the U.S. federal government validates the unit for security. That's at the PTP 700. Many of those same features and capabilities find their way into the 650 and the 450i, so that we have a number of these security features throughout the portfolio, and it really covers all areas from physical security, making sure that these are tamper evident with seals on the enclosure, management security, so everything is SNMP version 3 and HTTPS. We can monitor and audit who logged into the radio, who made the change, what did they change. You can back up everything so you are prepared for any kind of disaster. And then, of course, the over-the-air encryption and the process that we go through to attain these third-party validations sort of brings security into the DNA of all of these radios, because it's sort of an ongoing feature, an ongoing requirement because of those government customers and government deployments that we do. And so with that, I'll just briefly mention the PTP 700. This is a product that covers, well, it's really the premium product in the portfolio. It is a product that covers the widest band. It covers 4.4 gigahertz up to 5.9 gigahertz. So I'll point out that's one of the key differences. There's really about 4 key differences between the 700 and the 650. First one is that wide frequency range, 4.4 up to 5.925. The second one is it has what you see in the picture here, a connector-graded model. That connector-graded model has both a built-in panel antenna as well as N-type connectors. And through the software interface, you can tell the unit whether to use the built-in panel or use those N-types and connect to an external dish. So that's very useful for a tactical deployment where, say, the National Guard gets out on site for a disaster recovery and they don't know whether they're going to need the extra gain of a big dish or they need the small size of an integrated panel. With the connector-graded model, they can just have one unit that they stock and keep in inventory, and they can use it regardless of which of those deployments they go after. So from a government budget sustainment and project sustainment standpoint, that's a huge benefit. The third capability is the FIPS 140-2 security validation. So the product is validated by a third party to those highest standards of security and encryption. And then the fourth difference between the 650 and the 700 is the ability to support high-capacity multi-point, and I'll talk about that here in a moment. While I've been talking, if you have any questions on any of this, feel free to put those in, and we'll take those as they come or at the end. Here's just a quick summary of the 700. Again, it's got a similar performance as the 650, 450 megabits per second, but some of those features I mentioned about being optimized for flexibility with a single radio supporting different bands, a single radio with the antenna and connectors, and then what's most unique or new in this platform is the ability to run high-capacity multi-point. So that means I can take this same exact radio, I can make it a point-to-point link, I can make it a high-capacity multi-point hub, which means it's like an access point, or I can make it into a node, which means it's in the point-to-multi-point world, it's like a subscriber module. And I can do an 8-node multi-point solution with the 700. So go ahead, Andrew, and I'll show you how that works. You can go on to the next slide. The high-capacity multi-point, what you'll see here is we can nominate one of those radios to be a hub, and then by putting a sector or an Omni on those N-type connectors, I can now connect up to 8 different remote modules or nodes to make a 8-node multi-point system. What's different about this from a traditional point-to-multipoint solution is that we're maintaining very high spectral efficiency. So where I talk about a 10 bits per hertz on a point-to-point link, this point-to-multipoint high-capacity multi-point solution is going to have 9 bits per hertz spectral efficiency. So I can still deliver lots of capacity in a narrow amount of spectrum, but maintain that high capacity and, just as importantly, the exact same radios that I was deploying for point-to-point. So this is very useful for those military applications in a tactical space, as well as any program that's requiring a high sustainability and a high reuse of all the different units. This high-capacity multi-point feature will be coming available in July of this year. So this is a bit of an early preview. It's a software upgrade to a PTP 700. Today it's available only on the 700, and it will, as I mentioned, it will be coming out in July. Another accessory that we just introduced, or capability that we introduced just a month or so ago, was our quick deploy positioner. This positioner is available on and compatible with all of those products we talked about today. So the 450i, the 650, and the 700. This is really designed for those tactical applications, and you see the list there, where you want to go out and rapidly deploy a link, and you don't want to have to send a RF expert or an antenna alignment expert out to the location. Essentially what you do is you take this pedestal, or take this positioner, you can put it on a tripod like shown here, you can mount it on the back of a vehicle, and when you power up the unit, it will automatically start scanning the horizon, and within about 3 minutes will identify the other end of the link and lock onto that signal and then maintain that connection regardless of what happens in the environment. So if you have to move that tripod, if you have to move to a new location, if some non-line of sight conditions change and the reflective signal is off by a little bit, the unit will automatically adjust and realign that antenna for the perfect signal. So it's a nice capability again for these rapid deployment, and that again is available today and was just announced about a month ago. And what ties all of this together and makes it easy to deploy is the Link Planner software solution, and that's available for download from our website at no charge. And what you'll see here is a screenshot from Link Planner, and the goal of the product is to allow you to do point-to-point planning by identifying 2 points on a map, whether it's Google Earth or the lat-long coordinates from a GPS perspective, and it will pull in the terrain data automatically. We have the terrain profiles and database for the entire globe. The system will pull in that terrain data, and then you can do a series of what-if scenarios. You know, you can decide what band I want to run in. You can decide which radio I want to use, what channel bandwidths, what antennas and how high those antennas are. You can do all of that planning and what-if scenarios, and what the Link Planner will tell you is the capacity of that link and the availability of that link. So let's say I decide I want to have a 5 nines available link, which means it's going to be up 99.999% of the time or throughout a year, and I want it to deliver at least 100 megabits per second. You can just determine using Link Planner what size antenna and how high that antenna needs to be and what kind of radio I should use for that particular connection. And then Link Planner gives you a complete bill of materials. It gives you an installation report which tells the installer exactly where to align the antenna, and it really completes the whole life cycle of the point-to-point link. So a very important tool in all aspects, whether you're planning or supporting links. And again, you can get that from our support website at cambiumnetworks.com. There's also webinars on our forum. If you go to and you look for the webinars, There are some complete webinars on how to use Link Planner that'll give you sort of a walkthrough tutorial on using Link Planner. So it's a pretty easy tool to use, but if you want a little more background, there are some webinars available on that.
Bruce, we did have a quick question here. What is the list price of the quick deployment positioner?
The list price for that is $18,495 for the positioner. That includes the motor and the positioner and all of the brackets and cables that are required. And then you can attach separately. You can attach either a 450i, a 650, or a 700. That price point represents a significant reduction in the price point of what that kind of functionality was costing just a year ago. So part of what the unique capability there is the high integration of the software to the radio and putting that controller in the outdoor environment. So it brings the cost of the whole solution down to that point.
Fantastic, thank you.
Here's just a quick list, but the point here is that Link Planner has support from all of our different products, whether it's the point-to-point products, our licensed point-to-point products, the PTP 820 series, as well as our point-to-multipoint products. So once you learn that Link Planner tool, you can use it across the entire portfolio for point-to-point and point-to-multipoint planning. And with that, that kind of completes the product portion of the webinar. I did want to point out is that we are running a video contest where customers can submit a video of their most challenging point-to-point installation. You can see a snapshot of a nice point-to-point link being installed. The contest is being run starting March 1st. You can submit a video to our forum, and there's some more details available on the forum about this. But the idea is that you'll be able to submit your video. Community members will vote, pick the favorite, and then at the end of March we'll be awarding these prizes. Which first prize is a fully loaded PTP 650 link, and along with your favorite Cambium branded gear. I don't know what Ray's got in mind there, but this is going to be a fun contest. I think there's some really interesting links out there in the world, and this gives an opportunity to show off what you're doing, and then get some prizes out of it as well. So Andrew, I'm going to hand it over to you to wrap up, and if there's any other questions on the line.
Fantastic, Bruce. Yeah, so before we get going on, we have a question that came in. If there's any plans to add the 900 meg to the point-to-point 450i, as it is available on the PNP 450i currently.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we are in the process of productizing that. We have, some of you may know that we've recently introduced a point-to-multipoint 450i in the point-to-multipoint 450 in the 900 megahertz spectrum. We will also be introducing a PTP 450 in that same 900 megahertz spectrum. It'll have the form factor of the subscriber module. So if you're familiar with the 900 megahertz subscriber module on the 450, it'll have that similar form factor where the radio is attached to that Yagi antenna, and so it's a nice neat package for 900 megahertz solutions, and that will really complement that multi-point solution and give us great propagation on the as a point-to-point application. So that's probably I don't have an exact date for that, but I suspect that we'll be announcing the availability of that before the end of March.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bruce. So that being said, I want to thank everyone for joining. I would like you guys to see our social media sites from Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Share any ideas, comments, pictures, these video contests, anything you guys have in mind, please feel free to share. And also we have our community in our forum where we post anything from knowledge-based ideas, stories. Some discussions that have come up are from products, network planning, business ideas, different languages are obviously in there as well. And the biggest thing is obviously hearing from you guys. What do you guys want to see? And like Bruce said, they're constantly updating and constantly checking your guys' thoughts and ideas. and we are constantly looking that over. And before we go away, Bruce, we have another question here. Is there any plan to go for ultra-low latency products?
So, so the latency today of a 650 is about 1 to 3 milliseconds. So at this point, to go lower latency, that we do have our PTP 820 licensed product can achieve some lower latency than that. I'd be curious to understand what the application is that requires that super low latency, because another way to I'd be curious to the application. So the short answer is no. From a TDD perspective, or a time division duplex radio, we don't see going below about 1 to 3 milliseconds. I would be curious about the application because we have some customers that are doing things with the T1 interface to achieve very low jitter, and also with our Sync E and 1588 timing on a 650 to achieve very precise timing across the network. So depending on the application, there may be something we could do with those other features. Might be something worth posting on the forum, and we could talk about it there as well.
Yeah, I would recommend posting that on the forum as well, but just to get everyone on the same page here, Bruce, they mentioned it's in regards to high-frequency trading, which requires nanosecond delays.
So in the high-frequency trading standpoint, again, from a pure latency standpoint, I don't see us going below that 1 to 3 milliseconds. But having said that, the precision timing feature has been mentioned as a desired capability in that trading environment, because you want to have very precise, you want to lock in the exact, very precise time of day, and use of that precise network timing feature can help with that. But no, I don't think we don't have anything on the roadmap right now to go below that TDD latency.
Well, fantastic. Thanks, Bruce. Well, with all that, thank you, everyone, for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to post them on the forum. Like I said, and Sarah, anything of it's on social media. You will be getting a message and an email in regards to the webinar, and it will also be posted onto our community. So without further ado, thank you so much, Bruce, and thank you, everyone, for joining.